The first time my daughter called me in a month, her voice a beautiful, sunny melody of concern. It was to ask if she and her husband could borrow $500,000. The only problem was that just 4 weeks earlier, when I had called her in tears to tell her I had lost my job of 45 years and was terrified of losing my home, she had told me she was just, "Hi everyone, I'm Grandma Ruth. My name is Ruth Miller. I am 76 years old, and for my entire life, my home was in a small, hardworking town in Michigan." This story, my goodness, this is a story about a phone call. 2 phone calls, actually. One that broke my heart into a million tiny pieces, and another that gave me the strength to put it all back together again, but in a new and much stronger shape. It is a secret I have held close for the past year. Even my own sister doesn't know the full, unvarnished truth. She knows my daughter and I are distant. She does not know that our distance can be measured in dollars and cents. 10 million of them to be exact. There is a particular kind of pain, you see, that comes from being told you are no longer a priority to your own child. It is a quiet, soul-crushing pain. It is the pain of being inconvenient. You, who were once the center of their world, the sun in their sky, have become a problem to be managed, a phone call to be postponed, a difficult situation to be dealt with later. The shame of it is a physical weight. It makes you feel small. It makes you feel worthless. And for a little while, I believed it. I believed that I was the burden my daughter's busy, important life just couldn't accommodate. But I am telling this story now because I am done with that shame. I have learned that a person's worth is not determined by their usefulness to others, but by the quiet, steady value of their own life's work. And I am telling it for anyone out there who has ever been made to feel like an item on a to-do list that just keeps getting pushed to the bottom. Before I begin this difficult, and I must confess, rather satisfying story, I would be so very grateful for your kindness. My heart still aches a little when I think of that first phone call. Please, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support, your presence here, it is a great comfort. It gives this old woman the strength to finally pick up the receiver of my memory and tell you the story of how I learned the difference between a daughter's love and a daughter's liability. Thank you, my dears. Thank you for that. My life, for 50 wonderful years, was with my husband, my Frank. He was a good man, a steady man. He worked for the post office for 40 years, and I was a clerk at the county courthouse. We weren't wealthy people. We never took fancy trips to Europe or drove expensive cars. Our wealth was in our security. We were planners. We paid off our little house. We put money away every single week. And we had our pensions. Good, solid, government pensions that we had earned with a lifetime of quiet, steady work. George always used to say, "Alice, we're not building a mansion. We're building a lifeboat, so that when the storms come, we'll always be safe." We had one child, our daughter, Sarah. Oh, she was the light of our lives. But she was a dreamer, not a planner. She inherited my love of art and her father's kind heart, but none of our practicality. She's a wonderful, loving soul, but she is soft, easily swayed. She wants everyone to be happy, which often means she will bend to the will of the strongest person in the room. And then, 10 years ago, Sarah brought home Tom. He was the strongest personality I had ever met. He was a financial advisor, or so he said. He was charming, he was slick, and he had a smile that could talk a dog off a meat wagon. He swept my Sarah off her feet, and I must admit, he was impressive. He was so interested in us, in our lives. He would sit at our kitchen table, drinking George's coffee, and ask such smart questions. He wasn't just asking about our health. He was asking about our financial health. "George, Alice, you two are an inspiration," he'd say, his voice full of admiration. "You've planned so well. These pensions, they're like gold these days. You just don't see this kind of security anymore. You've truly built yourselves a fortress." He made us feel so proud. So smart. He wasn't pushy. He was just appreciative. He was an expert, and he was validating the choices we had made. He quickly became a part of the family. He would offer to look over our tax returns, just to make sure we were getting every deduction we were entitled to. He helped us set up online banking, telling us it was so much more efficient. He was slowly, expertly, weaving himself into the fabric of our financial lives, all under the guise of being a helpful, loving son-in-law. We thought he was a blessing, a knowledgeable guide who would help us navigate our retirement years. We didn't see that he wasn't a guide. He was a wolf, and he was patiently, expertly mapping the path to our henhouse. After George passed away 3 years ago, Tom's helpfulness became my lifeline. I was lost in grief. The world of bills and statements was a fog. And Tom, my capable, charming son-in-law, stepped in to manage everything. "Don't you worry about a thing, Alice," he'd say, patting my hand. "You just focus on healing. I'll handle all of this. It's what George would have wanted." And I believed him. I trusted him. I gave him access to everything. I thought he was protecting my lifeboat. I didn't realize he was secretly drilling a hole in the bottom of it, just waiting for the right moment to watch me sink. Tom's management of my life was a masterclass in quiet, insidious control. He was so smooth, so reassuring, that I barely noticed the walls of the trap being built around me. He had taken over my finances under the guise of helpfulness, and now he began to take over my reality. It started with small things, little memory games. I would mention a phone call with my sister, and he would look at me with a gently furrowed brow. "Oh, Alice, are you sure you spoke with her today? I think that was yesterday. You might be getting your days mixed up." He'd say it with such kindness, such gentle concern, that I'd be the one to apologize. "Oh, you're probably right. My head has been in such a fog since George passed." He started doing my grocery shopping for me. "You shouldn't be lugging heavy bags around," he'd insist. But I noticed my favorite foods were no longer in the pantry. The sharp cheddar cheese I loved was replaced with mild. The dark roast coffee was replaced with decaf. When I'd mention it, he'd just smile and say, "Oh, the doctor mentioned you should be cutting back on caffeine and saturated fats. I'm just looking out for your health, Alice." He was curating my life, my diet, my very tastes, all under the banner of caring for me. He was making me a stranger in my own home. My daughter, my sweet Sarah, was completely taken in. She saw a competent, caring husband taking a burden off her grieving mother's shoulders. "Tom is just so wonderful, Mom," she'd say, her eyes shining with love for him. "He worries about you so much. We both do." She was his greatest ally, and she had no idea. The true, ugly purpose of his campaign began to reveal itself about a year after George died. Tom started talking about my health constantly. He would notice things. A slight tremble in my hand that had been there for 20 years became a worrying new tremor. A momentary search for a word became a sign of cognitive decline. I ran into, "Oh, what's her name?" "The lady with the poodle." I'd say, "Mrs. Gable." Tom would supply, his voice full of gentle patience. "Yes, Mrs. Gable." Later, I would hear him talking to Sarah in a low, concerned whisper. "Did you see that honey? She couldn't remember Linda Gable's name. She's known her for 30 years. It's getting worse." He was building a case, not just for me, but for my daughter. He was creating a narrative of my decline, piece by piece, so that when the time came, she would be just as convinced as he wanted me to be. He began to help me with my medications, insisting on sorting my pills into a weekly dispenser. "It's so easy to get confused, Alice. This way, we know you're taking the right dose at the right time." It all sounded so logical, so caring. The crisis he had been manufacturing came to a head 6 months ago. I woke up one morning, feeling dizzy and disoriented. My head was foggy, my legs unsteady. I had never felt anything like it. I was terrified. I called Sarah, and within the hour, she and Tom were there. Tom took one look at me, and his face became a mask of grave concern. He checked my pulse. He looked in my eyes. We need to get you to a doctor, right now, he said, his voice firm, authoritative. At the doctor's office, Tom did all the talking. He presented the doctor with a detailed written list of my symptoms. Increased confusion, memory lapses, unsteadiness on her feet, tremors dying. He painted a picture of a frail, elderly woman, rapidly declining. I was so dizzy and confused, I could barely speak for myself. The doctor, faced with a loving, articulate son-in-law and his detailed notes, was concerned. He ran a battery of tests. The tests, of course, all came back normal. But Tom had an answer for that. I think it's her good days and bad days, doctor, he said, shaking his head sadly. Today is a good day, but the bad days, they're getting more frequent. And she lives all alone. We're terrified she's going to have a fall or forget to turn off the stove. Now I know what happened. Now I know that Tom, my brilliant, helpful son-in-law, had used his access to my medication. He had found a way to swap one of my blood pressure pills with a mild sedative. Just enough to create the symptoms he needed. Just enough to create the crisis that would allow him to enact his final plan. A week later, he and Sarah sat me down in my living room. They both looked so serious, so sad. It felt like an intervention. Mom, Sarah began, her eyes already filled with tears. She took my hand. We love you so much, and we are so worried about you. Tom took over, his voice a low, gentle, and deeply sorrowful murmur. Alice, we've been talking to your doctors. We've been doing a lot of research, and we think it's time to consider getting you some more professional, round-the-clock care. I stared at him. What are you talking about? A nurse? He shook his head slowly, his eyes filled with a pained sympathy. More than that, Alice. A place where you'll be safe, where there are professionals on hand 24/7, where you will have social activities and proper meals, and your medication will be managed perfectly. The words hit me like a physical blow. A nursing home. They were talking about putting me in a nursing home. No, I whispered, my voice trembling. No, this is my home. I am fine. The doctor said I was fine. The doctor also said you have good days and bad days, Tom countered gently. And we can't risk a bad day when you're all alone. What if something happened, Alice? Sarah and I. We would never forgive ourselves. We can't live with that kind of worry. He wasn't talking about my well-being. He was talking about theirs, about their worry, about their peace of mind. Sarah was openly sobbing now. Please, Mom, she wept. Please do this for us, so we know you're safe. We found the most beautiful place. It's called Pine Ridge Gardens. It's more like a resort than a home. It's the best. It's what you deserve. They had already picked it out. They had already done the tours. My fate had been decided long before this conversation. I looked at my daughter's tear-streaked face, at the genuine anguish in her eyes. She believed this was the right thing to do. She believed she was saving me. And I looked at Tom, at his kind, concerned, lying face. And I felt a despair so profound, it was like drowning. How could I fight them? My own daughter was begging me, believing she was acting out of love. And Tom had built his case so perfectly. He had the doctor's concern. He had the list of my symptoms. He had my daughter's complete trust. Any resistance from me would just be seen as further proof of my confusion, of my stubborn denial of my own decline. So I did the only thing I could do. I surrendered. All right, I whispered, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. If you think it's for the best. Tom's face flooded with relief. He came over and hugged me. Oh, Alice, he said, his voice thick with emotion. You are so brave. This is the right decision, and don't you worry about a thing. Your pension will cover it. There it was. The motive. The quiet, ugly, greasy little engine that had been driving this entire train. It wasn't about my safety. It was about my pension. A generous lifelong pension that once I was in the home would be paid directly to the facility, managed and controlled, of course, by my helpful, loving son-in-law. They weren't giving me a safe place to live. They were purchasing a comfortable, worry-free life for themselves, using my life savings as the down payment. I let them lead me through the process in a numb, silent haze. I toured Pine Ridge Gardens. It was, as Sarah had said, beautiful. It looked like a country club, but it felt like a prison. A beautiful, gilded cage. 2 weeks later, Tom and Sarah packed a small bag for me. They drove me to Pine Ridge and helped me settle into my new room. It was clean and sterile and completely soulless. Sarah cried as she hugged me goodbye. Tom gave my shoulder a firm, reassuring squeeze. "You're safe now, Alice," he said, his eyes gleaming with a quiet, triumphant victory. As they walked out the door, leaving me alone in that silent beige room, I looked out the window. And I felt a despair so complete, I thought my heart would simply stop. They had done it. They had won. Ike. They had my pension. They had my life. And I had let them take it. The first few weeks at Pine Ridge Gardens were a living nightmare disguised as a pleasant retirement. The staff were kind, the food was blandly nutritious, and the schedule was filled with mindless activities designed to keep us docile. Chair aerobics, bingo, watercolor painting classes where everyone painted the same bowl of fruit. I was a ghost at a gentle, pastel-colored party. I smiled, I nodded, I participated. But inside, I felt like I was screaming into a vacuum. Tom and Sarah would visit every Sunday. Sarah would bring me flowers and ask if I was happy. I would lie and say yes, because what was the alternative? To see the pain in her eyes? To start a fight I knew I couldn't win. Tom would sit there, looking so proud, so satisfied. He would talk about how well I looked, how this was clearly the best thing for me. He was the hero of this story, the man who had saved his mother-in-law from herself. The arrogance of it was suffocating. He handled everything, just as he had promised. The nursing home bills were paid directly from my pension account, an account to which he now had full power of attorney. He would bring me statements sometimes, showing me the expenses, the balance. "See, Alice?" he'd say, pointing to the numbers. "It's a lot, but we're managing it just fine. You don't have to worry about a thing." He was showing me how much my life cost. He was proving his value, his control. I was trapped. I had no access to my own money, no checkbook, no credit cards. Just a small weekly allowance for the gift shop. I was a child again, completely dependent on the man who had stolen my life from me. The despair was a physical weight. There were nights I would lie in that sterile bed and pray for a real heart attack just to make it all stop. The breaking point, the moment the fog of despair finally began to burn away, came in the form of a 72-year-old retired accountant named Mr. Finney. He was a resident on my hall, a sharp, cantankerous man with eyes that didn't miss a thing. We would often sit in the library together, not talking, just reading in a comfortable silence. One afternoon, I was trying to read the newspaper, but my eyes were blurry with unshed tears. Mr. Finney looked at me over the top of his spectacles. "You're not one of them," he said, his voice a gravelly rumble. "I'm sorry?" I asked, confused. "You're not like the others here," he clarified. "The ones who are truly gone. Your mind is sharp, I can tell. So what's your story? Did your kids stick you in here to get their hands on your house?" His words were so blunt, so direct, they were like a splash of cold water. I just stared at him, my mouth agape. He gave a short, bitter laugh. "That's how it usually goes. It happened to me. My son sold my business out from under me after my wife died. Told me I was getting forgetful. It's the oldest story in the book." He leaned forward. "Let me ask you something, Alice. Who handles your money?" My son-in-law," I whispered. Mr. Finney nodded slowly. "And I bet he's a real smooth talker, real charming. Makes you feel like he's doing you the biggest favor in the world while he's picking your pocket." I just looked at him, and my eyes filled with the tears I had been holding back for months. It was the first time someone had seen me. The first time someone had validated my reality. "What did you do?" I asked. "I fought back," he said, his eyes gleaming with a fierce intelligence. "I got a lawyer. I got my own statements. I proved he was a thief, You see, Alice, they think because we're old, we're stupid. They think we're not paying attention. Your best weapon isn't anger. It's a calculator, and a good, mean lawyer. That conversation with Mr. Finney was the spark that lit the fuse. The despair was burned away by a sudden, cold, righteous anger. They had underestimated me. Tom had built a perfect cage, but he had made one critical mistake. He had let me keep my mind. My fight back didn't begin with a phone call. It began with a letter. I had no access to a lawyer, but I had access to the public library. During my next supervised outing with Sarah, I told her I wanted to get some new books. While she browsed the fiction aisle, I went to the legal reference section. I found what I was looking for, a book on contract law and power of attorney. I spent an hour reading my mind, the mind that had been a clerk of the court for 30 years, absorbing the information, feeling it click back into place. I learned that a power of attorney is a sacred trust, and that any action taken that is not in the best interest of the principal is not just immoral, it is illegal. It is fraud. My next step was to get proof. Tom was so arrogant, so sure of his control, that he would bring me the monthly statements to review. He thought he was showing me my dependency. He didn't realize he was handing me my ammunition. I started keeping them, hiding them. The final piece of the puzzle, the weapon that would win the war, came from my own duplicity. I began to play the part they had assigned me. I became more confused. I started praising Tom more and more to my daughter. "Oh, Sarah, Tom is just so wonderful," I'd say, my voice full of admiration. "I don't know what I'd do without him managing everything. The numbers, the bills, it's all so complicated. I feel so much safer knowing he's in control." I was stroking his ego, reinforcing his belief that he was the hero of the story. I was setting the stage for my final move. One Sunday, during their visit, I put my plan into action. I looked at Tom, my eyes wide with a carefully crafted senile innocence. "Tom, dear," I said, "I was thinking, this place, Pine Ridge, it's so lovely, but it's so expensive. And I worry so much about my pension. What if it runs out?" Tom smiled his smooth, reassuring smile. "Now, Alice, what did I tell you? You are not to worry about a thing. Your pension is more than enough. And besides, I'm a financial advisor, remember? I've made some very clever investments with your portfolio. Your nest egg is actually growing." It was the lie I had been waiting to hear. The boast. The admission that he wasn't just managing my pension. He was actively using my money, under his power of attorney, for his own purposes. And my Sarah was sitting right there, listening to every word. "Oh, that's wonderful," I gushed. "But I'm just a silly old woman. I don't understand investments. Could you maybe write it down for me? Just a simple little summary. A list of the investments you've made for me, and how my pension covers the costs here. So I can look at it when I get worried. So I can remind myself how safe I am, thanks to you." His ego, his pride, his need to be seen as the brilliant savior. It was a trap he could not resist. "Of course, Alice," he said, beaming. He was so proud of himself. He took a piece of my stationery, and in his own clear, confident handwriting, he wrote it all down. A list of the stocks he had purchased with my money, the accounts he had moved funds into, and a neat little summary of how my pension payments were being used. It was a signed confession of his fraud. He handed it to me with a flourish. "There you go," he said. "Now you have it in black and white. You are perfectly safe." I took the paper, my hand trembling with the force of my suppressed triumph. "Thank you, Tom," I whispered. "You have no idea how much better this makes me feel." The next day, I wrote a letter. Not to a lawyer. Not yet. I wrote it to the Board of Pensions for the state of North Carolina. I enclosed a copy of the power of attorney document I had been forced to sign. And I enclosed a copy of the handwritten financial plan Tom had so arrogantly provided. My letter was very simple. "To whom it may concern," I wrote. "I believe my son-in-law, Mr. Thomas Prescott, who holds my power of attorney, may be mismanaging my pension funds for his own personal investment schemes. I am a resident at the Pine Ridge Gardens facility, and I no longer feel I am of sound mind to have made the decision to enter this facility or to grant him this authority. I am respectfully requesting a full investigation into the matter. I sealed the envelope. I gave it to Mr. Finney, who mailed it for me from town. The trap was set. The fuse was lit. I had no idea how big the explosion would be. After I sent that letter, a strange sort of peace settled over me. I had done all I could do. I had taken my one shot. Now, all I could do was wait for the gears of bureaucracy, which turn so slowly but grind so exceedingly fine, to do their work. I played bingo. I attended the watercolor classes. I smiled my pleasant, vacant smile. On the outside, I was the perfect picture of a contented resident. On the inside, I was a general, waiting for the reports to come back from the front line. It took 3 weeks. The first sign that my letter had hit its target came during Tom and Sarah's Sunday visit. They arrived looking stressed, their usual, breezy confidence replaced by a tight, anxious energy. "It's the strangest thing, Alice," Tom said, his voice a little too casual. "There seems to be some sort of administrative hold on your pension account. A review or something. It's probably just a bureaucratic mix-up, but it means the automatic payment to Pine Ridge for this month didn't go through. It's very annoying. I'll have to sort it out on Monday. I looked at him, my eyes wide with feigned innocence. "Oh my," I said. "Is that a problem?" No, of course not," he said quickly, forcing a smile. "Just a headache. Don't you worry about it." But I could see the flicker of panic in his eyes. The well had just run dry. The automatic, effortless flow of money that funded their comfortable life and my expensive imprisonment had just been turned off at the source. The full explosion came 1 week later. It arrived in the form of a phone call for me. A nurse came to find me in the library, where I was reading with Mr. Finney. "Alice," she said, "your son-in-law is on the phone for you. He sounds rather upset." Mr. Finney gave me a small conspiratorial wink. I took the call at the nurse's station. I could hear Tom's voice before I even put the receiver to my ear. It was a high-pitched, frantic squawk of pure, unadulterated panic. "Alice, what did you do?" he shrieked. "I just got off the phone with an investigator from the State Pension Board. They're asking questions. They're talking about fraud. They're freezing the account completely. You have to call them back. You have to tell them it's all a misunderstanding. You have to tell them you're confused." I held the phone a few inches from my ear, listening to his tirade. "I'm sorry, Tom," I said, my voice deliberately frail and confused. "An investigator? Oh my. That sounds so serious. I don't understand." "Ah, merci." "Of course you don't understand," he yelled, his voice cracking with desperation. "That's the whole point. You're confused. Just tell them that. Tell them your son-in-law handles everything because you're not capable. Tell them you trust me completely." "But I am confused, Tom," I said softly. "And I don't think I trust you anymore." And I hung up the phone. The final act of the drama was not mine to perform. It was performed by the state of North Carolina. An investigation was launched, and Tom's carefully constructed world came crashing down around him. Faced with an official inquiry, armed with my letter and his own handwritten, signed confession of his investment strategy, he had nowhere to hide. The resolution was swift. He was found to have committed financial fraud and abuse of his power of attorney. To avoid criminal prosecution, he had to pay back every penny he had invested with my money. He had to sign a document, drafted by the state, relinquishing all control over my finances and my person, forever. And then came the bill. With my pension frozen and his power of attorney revoked, the automatic payments to Pine Ridge Gardens stopped entirely. But the cost of my stay there did not. The bill for the previous month, a staggering $22,000 for their resort-style care, was sent directly to the only other name on my intake forms, the name of my loving son-in-law, who had guaranteed payment. The phone call I received from him that day was a thing of beauty. It was a symphony of sputtering rage, panicked threats, and pathetic, desperate pleading. $22,000, Alice? He screamed. They want me to pay it. Me? How am I supposed to pay this? This will ruin me. This will ruin Sarah. You have to turn the pension back on. You have to tell them to pay the bill. And me. I'm sorry, Tom, I said, and my voice was no longer frail or confused. It was calm and clear and cold as a winter morning. That sounds like a terrible financial miscalculation, but I'm just a silly old woman. I don't understand these things. I'm sure a clever financial advisor like you will figure something out. Then I hung up, and I never spoke to him again. I checked myself out of Pine Ridge Gardens the very next day. My pension was my own again. My life was my own again. My daughter, Sarah, was devastated. She was heartbroken, humiliated, and lost. She could not reconcile the man she had married with the man who had so coldly and systematically plotted to steal her mother's life savings. Their marriage, built on his confidence and her willful blindness, could not survive the truth. They divorced. He had to sell their big, fancy house to pay his legal fees and the outstanding bill at Pine Ridge. Sarah and I, we are healing. It is a slow, difficult road. She has to live with the knowledge that she was a pawn in his game, that she helped him build my cage. But she is my daughter, and I love her. She is learning to be a planner now, not just a dreamer. She is learning to stand on her own 2 feet. I learned that the most effective weapon is not a sword, but a fountain pen. I learned that bureaucracy, with all its slow, frustrating processes, can also be a powerful shield for those who know how to use it. Tom thought my pension was his personal piggy bank. He didn't understand that a pension is a promise. A contract. And he made the fatal mistake of putting his own fraudulent promises in writing. He saw me as a liability to be managed. He never saw me as a retired clerk of the court, a woman who spent 30 years filing, reading, and understanding the power of a documented fact. He underestimated me. He thought because I was old, I was foolish. He never stopped to think that my mind, the one he was so eager to declare incompetent, was the one thing that could bring him down. So if you are out there and someone is trying to take control of your life by convincing you that you can't manage it yourself, please remember this old woman. Ask questions, read the fine print, and never, ever be afraid to write a letter. You never know whose desk it will land on. Your voice, your words, on paper, they are more powerful than you can ever imagine. Thank you for letting me share my story with you. It is a quiet story, but one I felt needed to be told. If you have found it helpful, please do like this video, subscribe to our channel, and turn on the notification bell. It means the world to know these stories are being heard. And please, in the comments below, share a piece of wisdom that has helped you navigate a difficult time in your own life. Love you all. This is Grandma Alice, and I'll see you in the next story.